The humiliation of poverty has a sound. It's the crack in your voice when you cancel your child's birthday cake. Nia Carter stood at Morrison's bakery counter, her hands trembling as she whispered the words she'd rehearsed all morning. Behind her, an 8-year-old's dream crumbled. Across the store, a stranger in an expensive coat paused mid-step, frozen by something he heard in that broken voice. Something that reminded him of his own mother 30 years ago, making the same impossible choices. What happened next would rewrite 3 lives forever. If you want to see how one moment of kindness sparked an unstoppable chain of events, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. The afternoon sun slanted through Morrison's bakery windows, casting golden rectangles across the checkerboard floor. The smell of fresh bread and vanilla buttercream filled the air, comforting to some, torturous to others. Nia Carter belonged to the second category today. She'd been standing in line for 7 minutes, rehearsing the words in her head. Each time she tried them, they felt worse. Behind her, 2 women discussed summer vacation plans. Ahead, a young couple deliberated between chocolate ganache and lemon curd filling. Normal people making normal decisions, unaware that for the woman in the faded scrubs, this moment represented a small death. The death of her son's 8th birthday party. "Next, please!" The clerk's cheerful voice cut through Nia's thoughts. She stepped forward, her worn sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The name tag read Bethany, a college girl probably, working weekends, probably complaining to her friends about how boring it was. Nia would have traded everything to have boring problems again. "Hi, I need to—" Nia's voice caught. She cleared her throat, hating herself for the weakness. "I need to cancel an order. Name is Carter." Bethany's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Carter. Okay, I've got it. The baseball-themed cake, right? For pickup this Saturday?" "Yes." "Is there a problem with the design? Because we can totally modify—" "No, the design is perfect." Nia's throat tightened. I can't afford it right now." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Nia felt her cheeks burn. Around her, the bakery seemed to grow quieter, though logically she knew no one was actually listening. Poverty had a way of making you feel exposed, even when you were invisible. Bethany's expression shifted, not to pity, exactly, but to that careful neutrality people adopted when they didn't know what to say. "Oh, okay, there's a cancellation fee, unfortunately." "Store policy. It's already been started, so how much?" $15. $15. The amount Nia had budgeted for Malik's birthday present, a used baseball glove from the thrift store. She'd seen him eyeing it for weeks, his old one so worn the leather had split down the middle. "That's fine," Nia said softly. Can you charge it to the card on file?" "Sure thing." Bethany's fingers clicked across the keyboard. The transaction processed with a quiet beep that sounded, to Nia's ears, like a gavel striking. "You're all set, Ms. Carter. I'm really sorry about—" "It's okay." Nia forced what she hoped was a smile. "Thank you." She turned to leave, moving carefully, her body feeling fragile, as though one wrong step might shatter something fundamental. Her hand was on the door when she heard it, a small, familiar voice that stopped her cold. "Mom?" Nia's heart plummeted. She turned slowly. Malik stood in the bakery doorway, his backpack sliding off one shoulder, his brown eyes wide with confusion. He must have seen her through the window. The after-school program was only 2 blocks away. She'd told him to wait there until 5:30, but Malik had never been good at following rules when he was excited. "Hey, baby." Nia's voice came out steadier than she expected. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see the cake." His whole face lit up. "Can I see it? Is it ready?" Behind the counter, Bethany made a small, sympathetic sound. Nia knelt down, bringing herself eye level with her son. She put her hands on his shoulders, feeling the sharp blades of his shoulder bones through his thin t-shirt. He was growing so fast, too fast. She could barely keep him in clothes that fit. "Malik, listen to me. The cake isn't ready yet, okay? And actually—" She took a breath, hating every word she was about to say. "I'm thinking we might do something different this year for your birthday." "Different how?" The light in his eyes dimmed slightly. Well, you know how you've been wanting that glove? The Wilson one at Second Chances? Malik's expression flickered, interest warring with disappointment. Yeah. I thought maybe that could be your birthday present, and we could make a cake at home. Together. Wouldn't that be fun? But you said we were getting the special one, the baseball one with the bat on top. I know, baby. I know I did. But sometimes plans change and we can't afford it. Malik's voice was flat, emotionless. At 8 years old, he'd already learned to recognize the script. Nia felt something crack inside her chest. It's not that simple, Malik. It is, though. He pulled away from her hands, hitching his backpack higher. It's okay, Mom. I don't need a cake. I don't need a party either. Cakes are stupid anyway. Malik, I'm going to walk back to the center. I'll wait there like you said. He was out the door before she could stop him, the bells above the entrance chiming with artificial cheerfulness. Through the window, Nia watched her son's small figure disappear down the sidewalk, his shoulders hunched, his pace too fast. She stood slowly, awareness creeping back. The other customers pretending they hadn't witnessed the scene, Bethany staring at her computer screen with sudden, intense focus. Nia walked toward the exit with her head high, spine straight. Dignity was free. It was the only thing she had unlimited supply of. The afternoon air hit her face like a slap. She made it to her car, a 2003 Honda Civic with a dented fender and a passenger door that only opened from the inside, before the tears came. What Nia didn't know was that she'd had an audience beyond the bakery's regular customers. Julian Cross had been standing in the specialty coffee section when Nia walked in. He'd stopped in Brookhaven on impulse, breaking from his usual route between board meetings. His assistant had suggested it. You need to see how the other half lives, Julian. Ground yourself. He'd found the suggestion condescending at the time. Now, holding an overpriced bag of single-origin Ethiopian beans, he wasn't sure what he was finding. Julian had built his fortune on attention to detail. He noticed things other people missed. The slight hesitation before someone agreed to a deal, the microtensions in quarterly reports, the spaces between what people said and what they meant. It had made him a billionaire by 40. It had also made him profoundly lonely. He'd noticed Nia the moment she walked in, not because she was beautiful, though she was, in a way that had nothing to do with polish or presentation, but because of how she carried herself, like someone balancing something heavy and precious, terrified of dropping it. He'd watched her stand in line, watched her approach the counter, and when he heard her voice crack on the word afford, something in his chest had tightened. Then the boy appeared. Julian had frozen, coffee beans forgotten, as the scene unfolded. The mother kneeling, the child's face cycling through confusion, disappointment, resignation, the careful way she tried to reframe poverty as choice, the devastating efficiency with which the boy accepted it. Cakes are stupid anyway. Julian knew that tone. He'd used it himself decades ago when his mother explained why they were moving again, why he couldn't join the baseball team, why his father wasn't coming back. The tone of a child learning to expect less, to want less, to be less. He'd sworn he'd never forget what that felt like. Somewhere along the way, he had. Through the window, Julian watched the woman, Nia, the clerk had called her, sit in her car. He couldn't see her face clearly, but he recognized the posture. Shoulders curved inward, head bowed. The particular stillness of someone falling apart in the only private space they had. He thought of his own mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him clothed and fed, who'd smiled through exhaustion and pretended everything was fine, even when the electricity was shut off, who died at 58, worn down by a lifetime of impossible choices. He'd made his first million the year after she passed, built his first billion 3 years later, and he told himself the money was about freedom. But really, wasn't it about rewriting the past? About proving that the choices she'd made, the sacrifices she'd endured, meant something? Julian pulled out his phone. "Simone," he said when his assistant answered, "I need you to look into something." Nia made it through the next 3 days on autopilot. She worked her shifts at Brookhaven General, 12-hour stretches of changing bedpans, checking vitals, and absorbing the low-grade hostility of nurses who resented that aids were necessary. She smiled at patients. She documented everything in careful detail. She avoided the break room where people discussed their weekend plans. At night, she helped Malik with homework at their apartment's tiny kitchen table, the overhead light flickering occasionally, a problem with the wiring the landlord insisted didn't exist. She made dinner from whatever ingredients she'd assembled, pasta with butter, rice and beans, occasionally chicken if she'd found it on sale. She didn't talk about the birthday. Neither did Malik. On Thursday evening, she checked her bank account and felt the familiar hollow sensation. $347 until next payday. Rent was due in 5 days, $950 for their one-bedroom apartment with the broken air conditioning and the suspicious stain on the ceiling. She'd already called the landlord twice about extending the deadline. He'd agreed once. He wouldn't agree again. Nia pulled up her budget spreadsheet, a color-coded document that had taken her weeks to perfect and represented the careful architecture of survival: rent, electricity, car insurance, phone, groceries, Malik's after-school program, gas. There was no room for extras, no room for error, no room for birthday cakes. She thought about picking up an extra shift, but she'd already maxed out her hours without triggering overtime, which the hospital had explicitly forbidden. She thought about her ex, Malik's father, who'd left when their son was 2 and contributed nothing but silence. She thought about the nursing program she'd been accepted into: full tuition, 2 years, a path to an actual career, and the stack of financial aid forms she'd filled out. The ones that had been denied. The ones that left her short by $12,000 she didn't have and couldn't borrow. Nia closed her laptop. Saturday came anyway. She woke early and made pancakes from scratch. Malik's favorite. She found a candle in the back of the junk drawer and pressed it into the largest pancake, singing "Happy Birthday" while her son giggled and pretended to be embarrassed. "Make a wish, baby." Malik closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked at her with an expression too old for his face. "I wished for you to be happy, Mom." Nia's throat closed. "I am happy. I have you, don't I?" "Yeah, but, like, happy. Not pretend happy." She pulled him into a hug, pressing her face into his hair so he wouldn't see her expression. "I love you more than anything in the world. You know that, right?" "I know." At noon, she drove them to Riverside Park for Malik's birthday party, which consisted of the 2 of them and a Target brand superhero pinata she'd found on clearance. They were setting up when Nia's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Creditors, usually, or scammers. "Hello? Ms. Carter, this is Derek Chen from the Brookhaven Community Center. I'm the athletics coordinator." Nia frowned. Malik wasn't enrolled in any programs there. They cost money she didn't have. "I think you might have the wrong..." "No, ma'am. I'm calling about Malik. I understand today is his birthday." Nia's pulse quickened. Who told you that?" "We've had a last-minute opening in our Saturday baseball program, and we'd love to offer Malik a spot. Full scholarship, no cost to you." "I don't understand." "We also have a small birthday celebration planned at the field. Nothing major, just cake and some of the other kids. We'd love for you both to come down if you're available." Nia looked at Malik, who was studying the pinata with the careful attention of someone trying not to hope for too much. "Mr. Chen, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure..." "Please, Mrs. Carter, we really want Malik here. The program starts in 20 minutes, and..." He paused. "There's cake." Something in his voice stopped her protest. "What kind of cake?" "Baseball-themed, with a bat on top." Nia's vision blurred. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Brookhaven Community Center sat on the east side of town, in a neighborhood that straddled the line between working class and aspiring. The baseball field was modest, chain-link fences, worn dugouts, grass that had seen better days, but to Malik, walking through the gates, it might as well have been Yankee Stadium. Balloons lined the fence in blue and white. A folding table held pizza boxes, juice pouches, and in the center, impossible, miraculous, a 3-tier cake decorated with fondant baseballs and a chocolate bat that looked exactly like the one Nia had designed at Morrison's. A group of kids Malik's age were already warming up on the field. Derek Chen, a fit Asian man in his 30s, approached with a clipboard and a smile. "You must be Naya, and this is the birthday boy." Malik stared at the cake, speechless. "How is this possible?" Naya asked quietly. Derek's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. "We had an anonymous donation specifically for this. The donor was very insistent it happened today." "Who?" "Anonymous means I can't say, Ms. Carter. But they wanted you to know that every kid deserves a birthday party, especially kids like Malik." Naya wanted to push, to demand answers, but Malik was already drifting toward the field, drawn by the sound of a ball hitting a mitt. "Go ahead, buddy," Derek called. "We'll do cake after practice." For the next hour, Nia sat in the bleachers and watched her son play baseball. Really play. Not the makeshift games he organized with neighborhood kids using a tennis ball and a stick, but actual baseball with real equipment and coaches who taught him how to position his feet, how to follow through on his swing. She watched him miss. She watched him connect, the crack of the bat sharp and satisfying, and saw his face transform with joy as he ran the bases while other kids cheered. She watched him belong. When they gathered for cake, Malik's smile was so wide it looked like it might split his face. They sang happy birthday, 12 kids he'd just met, treating him like they'd known him forever. He blew out the candles with one breath. "What did you wish for?" one of the kids asked. Malik glanced at his mother. "Already came true." Later, after pizza and cake and more baseball, after Malik had exchanged numbers with 3 new friends and extracted a promise from Derek that he could come back next week, Nia loaded the leftover cake into her car. Derek had insisted she take it, and drove home in a daze. Malik fell asleep in the passenger seat, his new glove. Derek had given him one, part of the program, he'd said, clutched to his chest. Nia pulled into their apartment complex and sat in the cooling car, watching her son sleep. Someone had done this. Someone had seen her at her lowest moment and decided to act. Not with pity, not with charity, but with the kind of thoughtful kindness that understood exactly what a mother's heart needed. She didn't know who, she didn't know why. But as she carried Malik upstairs and tucked him into bed, glove and all, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Julian watched the footage on his laptop, security camera feed from the community center, accessed through channels he probably shouldn't have used but had anyway. He watched the boy's face when he saw the cake, watched the mother's hands shake as she accepted a piece, watched the way she kept touching her son's shoulder, as if to confirm he was real. This was real. The moment wouldn't dissolve. His assistant, Simone, sat across from him in the hotel suite he'd rented in Brookhaven. She'd arranged everything, tracked down Nia's information from the bakery receipt, legally questionable, contacted the community center, generous donation, commissioned a rush order on the cake, expensive, and coordinated the entire event, complicated. "You're pleased," Simone observed. "I am. You're also planning something else." Julian closed the laptop. "I've been thinking about the nursing program. The one she was accepted to? She's 12,000 short. Financial aid fell through. She makes just enough to be ineligible for most grants, but not enough to actually afford it. The welfare cliff." Exactly. Julian stood pacing to the window. Brookhaven spread out below, a town that had seen better days, full of people working hard and barely staying afloat. What if we created a scholarship? You have several scholarship programs already. Not like this, something specifically for single parents in healthcare. Full tuition, plus childcare, plus living expenses. No strings attached, no publicity, just access. Simone studied him with the frank assessment of someone who'd worked for him for 8 years. This is about your mother. This is about people who deserve a chance and don't get one because the system is designed to keep them exactly where they are. Julian turned back to her. Start with Nia. Make it look legitimate. Application process, selection committee, the works. But make sure she's the first recipient. She'll be suspicious. I'm counting on it. If she's smart enough to question it, she's smart enough to use it. Simone made a note on her tablet. And when she eventually finds out you're behind it, Julian smiled slightly. Then I guess I'll have to convince her it was always about more than one canceled cake. On Monday morning, Naya received an email from Brookhaven General's Human Resources Department. Subject: Second Horizon Scholarship. Immediate action required. She almost deleted it as spam, but something made her click. Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a candidate for the inaugural Second Horizon Scholarship, a new program designed to support healthcare workers pursuing advanced degrees. The scholarship provides full tuition coverage for accredited nursing programs, childcare stipend, living expenses stipend, textbook and materials allowance. This is a need-based scholarship requiring no repayment and carrying no service obligation. If you are interested in being considered, please complete the attached application by Friday. Nia read it 3 times. Then she called the HR department. This is Nia Carter. I received an email about a scholarship and I think there's been a mistake. To the HR representative, a woman named Paula, who Nia had met exactly once, sounded genuinely pleased. No mistake, Nia. You were specifically recommended. The donor wants to support people like you who are working hard and trying to advance. Who's the donor? Anonymous, I'm afraid, but they're very serious about this program. We've already had it vetted by the hospital's legal team. It's completely legitimate. After she hung up, Nia sat at her kitchen table with the application open on her laptop. The questions were straightforward: academic history, financial need, career goals, why nursing. She thought about the birthday party that had appeared from nowhere. She thought about the timing, 4 days between the canceled cake and this opportunity. She thought about Derek Chen's words. The donor was very insistent. Someone was watching her, someone with resources, someone who, for reasons she couldn't fathom, had decided she mattered. Nia filled out the application with shaking hands. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew enough to recognize a lifeline when one appeared. And she knew enough about drowning to grab it with both hands. The notification came through on a Tuesday afternoon while Nia was restocking supply closets on the 4th floor. Her phone buzzed against her hip and she almost ignored it. Checking personal devices during shifts was technically forbidden, but something made her glance at the screen. Second Horizon Scholarship Committee. Decision available. Her heart stopped, then started again, too fast. Nia looked down the hallway. Empty. She ducked into the supply closet and opened the email with trembling fingers. Dear Ms. Carter, congratulations. You have been selected as the first recipient of the Second Horizon Scholarship. Funding will begin immediately and cover the full duration of your nursing program at Brookhaven Community College, including... The phone slipped from her hand. She caught it before it hit the floor, reading the words again and again, waiting for them to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Full tuition. Childcare stipend, $1,500 monthly. Living expenses, another $1,000. Books, materials, everything. It was impossible. It was real. Carter, the charge nurse's voice echoed down the hall. You got those linens yet? Nia shoved the phone back in her pocket. Coming. But her hands shook as she loaded the cart, and when she pushed it down the hallway, she barely saw where she was going. Her mind was already racing ahead, calculating, planning, hoping in a way that felt dangerous because hope always hurt worst when it died. She could start classes in January, spring semester. 8 months from now, she could be a student again instead of just surviving. Malik could stay in the after-school program without her juggling shifts to afford it. They could breathe. The thought was so foreign it almost didn't register. She finished her shift in a daze, drove home, made dinner, helped Malik with his math homework, fractions, which he hated. Only after he'd gone to bed did she sit at the kitchen table and open her laptop to read the full scholarship details. That's when she saw the name attached to the program. Second Horizon Scholarship, established by the Cross Foundation. Cross Foundation. Nia pulled up a search engine and typed the name. The results loaded instantly. Julian Cross, tech billionaire, founder of Cross Tech Solutions, estimated net worth $4.3 billion. 44 years old. Never married. Known for disrupting cloud infrastructure and building enterprise software that somehow made him unfathomably rich. His face stared back at her from a dozen photos. Sharp features, dark hair with silver threading through it, eyes that looked simultaneously calculating and weary. He wore expensive suits in some shots, casual sweaters in others. In every photo, he looked slightly uncomfortable, like someone enduring a necessary annoyance. Nia clicked through article after article, most focused on his business achievements, his latest acquisitions, his rare public appearances. But buried in a profile from 3 years ago, she found a paragraph that made her pause. Cross rarely discusses his childhood, but sources close to the entrepreneur confirm he grew up in poverty in rural Pennsylvania. His mother, Maria Cross, worked multiple jobs to support them after his father abandoned the family. She died in 2019, shortly before Crosstech's initial public offering made her son a billionaire. She never got to see what her sacrifices built, a former colleague noted. That haunts him. Nia sat back in her chair. A billionaire who grew up poor, who lost his mother, who'd created a foundation that gave scholarships to struggling parents, who'd been in Morrison's bakery the day she canceled Malik's cake. She pulled up the bakery's location on her phone, then searched for Crosstech offices. The company headquarters was in Chicago, 800 miles away. But she found a mention of Cross attending a business development meeting in Springfield, 40 minutes from Brookhaven, on the exact date she'd been at the bakery. It couldn't be coincidence, could it? Nia's phone rang, startling her. Unknown number again. She answered warily. Hello? Ms. Carter, this is Simone Liu, director of the Cross Foundation. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your scholarship selection and answer any questions you might have. The woman's voice was crisp, professional, carrying the kind of polish that came from expensive education and extensive practice. Thank you, Nia said carefully. I'm still processing everything. Of course, it's a significant opportunity. I wanted to walk you through next steps, enrollment coordination, fund disbursement, childcare arrangements. Do you have a few minutes? Yes, but I have a question first. A pause. Certainly. Who recommended me for this scholarship? I'm afraid that information is confidential. The selection committee reviews applications blind to avoid bias. But someone had to nominate me. Someone had to know I needed this. Another pause, longer this time. When Simone spoke again, her voice was gentler. Ms. Carter, does it matter? You qualified on merit. Your application was exceptional. You deserve this opportunity regardless of how it reached you. It matters to me. I understand, but I genuinely can't tell you what I don't know. The nomination process is separate from selection. I can tell you that Mr. Cross takes a personal interest in every scholarship recipient's success, but he doesn't influence individual selections. Mr. Cross, Nia repeated. Julian Cross. Yes. Has he ever been to Brookhaven? The pause stretched so long Nia thought the connection had dropped. Finally, Simone spoke. Ms. Carter, I think you should focus on your incredible opportunity rather than the logistics behind it. Does that seem reasonable? It was a non-answer wrapped in professionalism, which was, Nia supposed, an answer in itself. When do classes start? She asked. She could almost hear Simone's relief. January 9th, but we'll need to coordinate with the college by next week. Can we schedule a call to discuss details? They set a time. After hanging up, Nia stared at Julian Cross's photo on her laptop screen. She didn't know what game was being played, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This man had changed her life, and she needed to understand why. The answer came sooner than expected. 2 weeks later, Nia received an email from hospital administration. Subject line, Community Partnership Event, Volunteer Opportunity. The Cross Foundation will be hosting a healthcare initiative launch event at Brookhaven General next Friday evening. As a scholarship recipient, your attendance is requested but not required. Light refreshments will be served. Business casual attire. Nia read it 3 times. He was coming here. She could confront him, demand answers, or she could stay home, accept the gift, and never question the hand that fed her. The choice should have been obvious. Don't bite the hand. Don't make waves. Don't risk the one good thing that had happened in years. But Nia had never been good at taking the safe path. Friday evening, she dropped Malik at her neighbor's apartment, Mrs. Rodriguez, who watched him sometimes in exchange for Nia driving her to doctor's appointments. She'd borrowed a blazer from a coworker, paired it with her nicest pair of pants, and tried not to think about how out of place she'd feel. The hospital's conference center had been transformed. Round tables with white linens, soft lighting, a banner reading Second Horizon Initiative, investing in healthcare's future. At least 50 people milled around. Hospital administrators, local politicians, people in suits that probably cost more than Nia's monthly rent. She stood in the doorway, suddenly certain this was a mistake. "Nia!" Paula from HR appeared at her elbow, smiling warmly. "I'm so glad you came. Come on, let me introduce you to some people." Before Nia could protest, she was being guided through the crowd. Hospital executives she'd never spoken to suddenly knew her name. Local business owners asked about her nursing plans. A city councilwoman wanted to know about her experience as a scholarship recipient. It felt surreal. Like she'd stepped through a mirror into a version of her life where people saw her as something other than invisible. And then she saw him. Julian Cross stood near the front of the room, speaking with the hospital's CEO. He was taller than she'd expected from the photos and thinner, with the kind of lean build that suggested he forgot to eat regularly. His suit was impeccable, dark gray, perfectly tailored, but he wore it like armor rather than decoration. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the room. Nia saw recognition flash across his face, followed quickly by something else. Uncertainty, maybe. Or nervousness. Strange emotions for a billionaire at his own event. He excused himself from the CEO and walked toward her. Each step felt deliberate, measured. The crowd seemed to part instinctively. Up close, his eyes were darker than in the photos. Brown, almost black, with the intensity that made Nia want to look away. But she didn't. "Ms. Carter," he said. His voice was quieter than she expected, rough around the edges like he didn't use it enough. "I was hoping you'd come." "Were you?" Not a question. A slight smile touched his mouth. "Yes." "You were in the bakery." Another statement. "Yes." "You did all of this because you saw me cancel a cake." Julian glanced around. People were watching, trying to appear like they weren't. "Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private?" Nia wanted to refuse, wanted to demand answers right here, in front of everyone. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive through years of barely surviving, reminded her that making a scene wouldn't accomplish anything except possibly losing the scholarship. "Lead the way." He guided her to a small conference room off the main hall. The noise of the party faded as the door closed behind them. Suddenly, it was just the two of them, and Nia's heart was beating too fast. Julian gestured to a chair. "Please." She sat back straight, hands folded in her lap, waiting. He remained standing, hands in his pockets, and for a long moment he just looked at her, studying her face like he was trying to solve a complex equation. "You're angry," he finally said. "I don't know what I am." "That's fair." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat, elbows on knees, leaning forward. "I was in Morrison's that day. I heard you cancel the cake. I saw your son arrive. I watched the whole thing unfold, and He trailed off, searching for words. "You what?" Nia prompted. "I saw my mother," Julian said quietly. 30 years ago. Same choice, different details. She was canceling my birthday party so she could pay the electric bill. And I remember thinking, even as a kid, that my mother was the strongest person I'd ever known, because she held her head high, walking out of that community center like she'd won instead of lost. His eyes met Nia's. "You walked out of that bakery the same way, and I thought, if I have all this money, all this power, and I can't fix this one thing for this one person, what the hell is any of it worth?" Nia's throat tightened. "So you decided to play fairy godmother?" "I decided to do what I could. The party was simple, but then I started thinking about the bigger picture, why you were in that position in the first place. And I found out about the nursing program, the financial aid gap, the systemic barriers that keep people exactly where they are. So I created something that could actually change trajectories." "For me?" "For you first," he acknowledged. "But the foundation is already expanding. By next year, we'll fund 50 scholarships, 500 the year after. This isn't charity, Nia. It's infrastructure. Infrastructure that started because you felt guilty about your childhood." Julian flinched but didn't deny it. "Does the motivation matter if the outcome is good?" "It matters when I'm the lab rat for your guilt project." "You're not—" He stopped, took a breath. "You have every right to be upset. I should have been transparent from the beginning, but I also know how these things work. If I'd approached you directly, you would have refused. If I'd made it obviously about you, you would have seen it as pity. So I tried to create something that looked legitimate enough for you to accept. Manipulative. Strategic, Julian corrected. Then softer. But yes. Also manipulative. I'm sorry. Naya sat back studying him. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. This man who commanded boardrooms and managed billions. Vulnerable, even. Why are you really here? She asked. In Brookhaven. At this event. You could have sent someone else. Why come yourself? Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was almost too soft to hear. Because I wanted to see if it worked. If you were actually getting what you needed. If the money was translating into real change. And you're here. You're starting school in January. Your son is playing baseball, so yes, I think it's working. That's not what you're really asking, Nia said. He looked up, startled. You want to know if I'm grateful, she continued. If I appreciate what you did. If I think you're a good person for doing it. The answer is complicated, Nia said. I am grateful. Enormously. This scholarship changes everything for me and Malik, but I'm also angry that I needed it in the first place. That the system is designed so that a single mother working full-time at a hospital can't afford an 8-year-old's birthday cake. That my son has already learned to expect disappointment. That it took a billionaire's guilt trip to give me access to education I've earned 10 times over. She leaned forward. So yes, Mr. Cross, your intervention worked. But it's also a symptom of everything that's broken. And I don't know how to feel about being saved by the same kind of wealth that keeps people like me struggling. Julian absorbed this without defensiveness. You're right, about all of it. I know I am. A slight smile. You're also remarkable. And I'm not saying that to flatter you. I'm saying it because in the 2 weeks since your application was processed, you've already enrolled in prerequisites, arranged childcare, and negotiated a flexible schedule with your supervisor. Most people would take time to adjust. You hit the ground running. Because I can't afford not to. If this falls through, if something goes wrong, I need backup plans. Plural. Nothing will go wrong. You can't promise that. No, Julian agreed, but I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to make sure you succeed. Not because you're a project or an experiment, but because you deserve it, and because… He stopped abruptly. Because what? Nia asked. Julian stood, walked to the window. Outside, the parking lot stretched away into darkness. Because I think you're going to do extraordinary things. And I want to help make that possible. There was something in his voice that made Nia's skin prickle. Not attraction, not exactly, but recognition. The sense of being seen by someone who understood the weight of carrying more than you should. I need to go, she said, standing. My neighbor is watching Malik, and I told her I'd be back by 8. Julian nodded. Of course. Thank you for coming, and for being honest with me. Nia walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Mr. Cross? Julian, please. Julian. The name felt strange in her mouth, too familiar. If you're serious about this foundation helping people, you need to actually listen to them, not just throw money at problems and hope it sticks. People don't need saviors, they need systems that work. Will you help me understand what that looks like? She turned to look at him. He stood silhouetted against the window, hands still in his pockets, expression open. I'll think about it, she said. She left before he could respond. The drive home took 15 minutes. Nia spent them replaying the conversation, analyzing every word, every gesture. Julian Cross wasn't what she'd expected. He was more human, more broken, and somehow that made everything more complicated. Because it was easier to accept help from an impersonal foundation than from a man who looked at her like she mattered. Mrs. Rodriguez met her at the door with a smile. Malik was perfect, mija. Did his homework, ate his vegetables, didn't complain once about bedtime. Thank you so much, Mrs. Rodriguez. How was the fancy party? Nia thought about the conference room, the conversation, Julian's eyes when he mentioned his mother. Complicated. The good things usually are. After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Nia checked on Malik. He was asleep, sprawled across his bed with a baseball tucked under his pillow. She straightened his blankets and kissed his forehead. Then she sat in her living room, in the silence and the darkness, and tried to figure out what happened next. 3 days later, another email arrived. Ms. Carter, the Cross Foundation is establishing an advisory board of scholarship recipients to inform program development. We would like to invite you to serve on this board. Compensation is $500 per monthly meeting, plus expenses. Your insights would be invaluable. Please let us know if you're interested. Simone Liu, Cross Foundation. $500 for a monthly meeting. $6,000 a year for talking about her experience and offering suggestions. Nia's first instinct was to refuse. She didn't want to be bought, didn't want to become complicit in a system that felt simultaneously generous and exploitative. But $6,000 meant Malik could join the travel baseball team. Meant new shoes when he needed them, instead of when the old ones fell apart. Meant breathing room in a budget that allowed none. She called the number listed in Simone's signature. Ms. Liu, this is Nia Carter. I have questions about the advisory board position. Of course. What would you like to know? Is Julian Cross going to be at these meetings? A pause. Typically, yes. He values direct input from recipients, but if that's uncomfortable for you, it's not uncomfortable, Nia interrupted. Then more honestly, it's complicated, but I'm interested. I want to make sure this program actually helps people, not just makes rich donors feel good about themselves. That's exactly why we want you on the board. Simone's voice warmed with something like approval. Your perspective is essential. When can you start? Send me the details. I'll review them and let you know. After hanging up, Nia opened her laptop and started a document. If she was going to do this, if she was going to take Julian Cross's money and his opportunity, she was going to make damn sure it counted for something. She titled it Second Horizon Advisory Board, Real Talk. Then she started writing everything the foundation was getting wrong, everything the scholarship application had missed, every barrier she'd faced that money alone couldn't fix. The list grew to 3 pages before she forced herself to stop. This could work, she thought, if she played it right, if she stayed focused, if she didn't let Julian's guilt or her gratitude cloud the fundamental mission. She could take his resources and turn them into something that actually mattered. The thought was intoxicating and terrifying. The first advisory board meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks later at the Cross Foundation's regional office in Springfield. Nia arranged coverage for her shift, dropped Malik at his new Saturday baseball practice, which he now attended religiously, and made the 40-minute drive with her stomach in knots. The office occupied the top floor of a renovated historic building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than her car. Simone greeted her in the lobby. Nia, so glad you could make it. The others are already here. Others? 4 other scholarship recipients from across the region. We wanted to start with a small group. Simone led her to a conference room where 3 women and 1 man sat around a polished table. They looked up as Nia entered, and she saw her own uncertainty reflected in their faces. Everyone, this is Nia Carter, our inaugural recipient. Nia, meet Amanda, James, Keisha, and Laura. They exchanged greetings. Amanda was pursuing a paralegal certification. James, a teaching degree. Keisha, nursing like Nia. Laura, medical coding. All single parents, all working full-time while trying to advance. Mr. Cross will join us shortly, Simone said. In the meantime, help yourselves to coffee and pastries. We'll get started in 5 minutes. The others immediately gravitated toward the food. Free food was free food. Nia poured coffee she didn't need just to have something to do with her hands. You nervous? Keisha appeared beside her, a woman about Nia's age with box braids and kind eyes. Terrified, Nia admitted. Same. I keep thinking they're going to realize they made a mistake and ask for the money back. Right? Like this is too good to be real. But it is real, Keisha said firmly. We deserve this. We've earned it. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you different. Before Nia could respond, the door opened. Julian entered, and the room's energy shifted. He wore dark slacks and a sweater, business casual, but somehow still looked out of place, like he'd be more comfortable in a server room than a conference setting. Good morning, he said. Thank you all for coming. Please, sit. They arranged themselves around the table. Julian took a seat at the end, Simone beside him with a tablet ready for notes. I'm going to be direct, Julian said. This foundation exists because I saw someone struggling with a choice they shouldn't have to make. That person is in this room. His eyes flicked to Nia, then away. But I'm not an expert in what you all need. I have money and resources, but I don't have your lived experience. This board exists so you can tell us what actually helps. Not what I think should help. Not what sounds good in a press release. What actually makes a difference in your lives. Amanda raised her hand tentatively. You want us to criticize the program? I want you to improve it, Julian corrected. Criticism, suggestions, complaints, all of it. That's what you're being paid for. Honest feedback. Even if it's harsh, James asked. Especially if it's harsh. Nia met Julian's eyes across the table. The application process is too complicated. 3 essays, 2 interviews, financial documentation going back 2 years. For people working multiple jobs, just completing the application is a barrier. Julian nodded. What would you change? Streamline it. 1 essay, 1 interview. Accept tax returns instead of requiring 3 years of bank statements. Done. What else? For the next 2 hours, they talked. Really talked. About childcare desserts and inflexible work schedules. About the gap between financial aid and actual expenses. About the shame of asking for help and the exhaustion of being grateful all the time. Julian listened, asked questions, took notes, didn't defend or justify, just absorbed. Nia found herself watching him when she should have been focusing on the conversation. The way he leaned forward when someone spoke, giving them complete attention. The way his expression tightened when Amanda described being denied a raise because her employer knew she couldn't quit. The way he looked at each of them, not with pity, but with something closer to respect. When the meeting ended, the others left quickly. They all had places to be, kids to pick up, shifts to work. Nia lingered, gathering her papers more slowly than necessary. Julian noticed. Julian, of course he did. Did you get what you needed? She asked when they were alone. I think so. Did you? You actually listened. That's more than I expected. You thought I'd be performative about this. I thought you'd be a rich guy playing at philanthropy to feel better about your billions. Julian smiled slightly. I might still be that, but I'm trying not to be. Nia slung her bag over her shoulder. The $500 per meeting, that bothers me. Why? Because it feels like payment for compliance, like you're buying my silence. It's payment for labor, Julian said. Your time, expertise, and insights have value. I'm compensating you accordingly. Most advisory boards are volunteer, sir. Most advisory boards are filled with retired executives who don't need the money. You're giving up work hours to be here. That has a cost. Nia studied him, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. She didn't find one. This is weird, she said finally. What is? You, this, all of it. I don't know how to categorize you. Is that necessary? For my sanity? Yes. Julian laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Fair enough. Let me know when you figure it out. Nia headed for the door, then stopped. Julian? Yes? Thank you, for today, for actually caring what we think. Thank you for telling me. She left before the moment could become something else. On the drive home, Nia's phone rang. Malik's name lit up the screen. Hey, baby, what's up? Mom, you're not going to believe what happened. His voice vibrated with excitement. Nia smiled despite herself. What happened? Coach Derek says if I keep practicing, I could try out for the select team next summer. The one that travels to tournaments and everything. That's amazing, Malik. But it costs money, like a lot, for uniforms and travel and stuff. His excitement dimmed. So, probably we can't do it, but it's okay. I'm just happy Coach thinks I'm good enough. Nia's chest tightened. 3 months ago, she would have had to tell him no. Would have had to watch his face fall as he learned again that wanting wasn't enough. We'll figure it out, she said. If you make the team, we'll find a way. Really? Really? After they hung up, Nia pulled into a gas station parking lot and sat with the engine running. She thought about Julian's question. Does the motivation matter if the outcome is good? She thought about Malik's voice, bright with hope instead of dimmed by resignation. She thought about starting nursing school in 8 weeks. Maybe it didn't matter why Julian had intervened. Maybe what mattered was what she did with the opportunity, how she used it not just for herself but for others. She pulled out her phone and typed an email. Julian, I've been thinking about the advisory board. I want to propose something bigger, not just feedback sessions, but a mentorship component. Pair each scholarship recipient with someone who succeeded in their field. Build community, not just individual support. Let me know if you're interested in discussing. Nia. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came before she'd even pulled back onto the highway. Nia, I'm very interested. Can we schedule a call this week to discuss details? Julian Nia smiled. Maybe she was starting to figure out how to categorize Julian Cross after all, not as a savior, not as a guilt-driven billionaire, but as a partner in building something better. The thought should have been strange. Instead, it felt like possibility. The call happened on Thursday evening after Malik had gone to bed and Nia had finally finished the mountain of prerequisite reading for her anatomy class. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, notes spread around her, feeling simultaneously prepared and completely out of her depth. Julian's face appeared on the screen at exactly 7 o'clock. He was in what looked like a home office, bookshelves behind him, soft lighting, none of the corporate sterility of the foundation building. "Thanks for making time," he said. "Thanks for being interested." Nia pulled her notes closer. "I've been thinking about this a lot. The scholarship is incredible, but it's also isolating. Everyone else in my life is either struggling the same way I was, or they can't understand what it's like. There's no one to ask questions, no one who's been through it." Julian nodded, listening with that intense focus she was starting to recognize as his default mode. "So I started wondering, what if recipients were paired with mentors? People who've succeeded in their fields, who remember what it was like to struggle. Not just for career advice, but for everything. The practical stuff no one tells you." "Like what?" "Like how to navigate office politics when you're coming from service work. How to ask for accommodations when you have a sick kid. How to dress for interviews when you can't afford new clothes. The invisible curriculum that people with resources learn automatically." Julian was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "That's brilliant." "You think so?" "I think it's exactly what the program needs. Individual support is good, but community support is transformative." He pulled up something on his screen. "I'm looking at our current recipient list. 53 people across 4 states. If we could match each one with an appropriate mentor—" "It can't be random," Nia interrupted. "It has to be people who actually care, who remember, not just executives checking a box for their corporate responsibility goals." "Agreed. So how do we find them?" Nia had been thinking about this for days. "We start with people who've used similar programs, scholarship recipients who've graduated and succeeded, people who've worked their way up from the bottom. Then we expand to anyone who genuinely wants to give back. We'd need structure, guidelines, training for mentors so they understand their role. And boundaries," Nia added. "Clear expectations on both sides. This can't be charity, it has to be partnership." Julian smiled. "You've really thought this through. I've had a lot of quiet shifts at the hospital to think." They spent the next hour mapping out details, mentor matching criteria, meeting frequency, success metrics. Nia found herself relaxing as they worked, falling into an easy rhythm of proposal and refinement. Julian challenged her assumptions but respected her insights. When they disagreed, he articulated his reasoning and genuinely considered her counterarguments. It was strange collaborating with a billionaire at her kitchen table, but it was also exhilarating. "I want you to lead this," Julian said as they were wrapping up. Nia blinked. "What?" "The mentorship program. You should run it." "Julian, I'm starting nursing school in 6 weeks. I'm already working full-time. I can't—" "Part-time," he interrupted. 10 hours a week. Flexible scheduling. You'd coordinate mentor recruitment and matching, develop training materials, track outcomes, compensated at $40 an hour. Nia's calculator brain activated instantly. $40 times 10 hours times 4 weeks. $1,600 monthly. Almost half her current salary for a quarter of the hours. "That's too much," she said automatically. "It's market rate for program coordination. Actually, it's below market rate, but I'm assuming you'll negotiate up once you see how much work it actually is." I don't have experience with this kind of thing. You have lived experience, which is more valuable, and you clearly have vision and organizational skills. The rest you'll learn. Nia pressed her palms against the table, trying to ground herself. Why me? You could hire someone with actual credentials. I could hire someone who looks good on paper and doesn't understand the first thing about what our recipients need. Or I could hire someone who's living it and has the intelligence to translate experience into structure. Julian leaned closer to his camera. I trust your judgment, Nia, more than I trust most people's credentials. You barely know me. I know you're the kind of person who shows up to a scholarship event ready to challenge the entire foundation model. I know you think strategically and care deeply. That's enough for me. Nia looked at her notes, at the careful plans she'd sketched out, at the possibility of building something that could help dozens of people navigate the same impossible maze she'd been trapped in. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. Take your time. But even as she said it, Nia knew she was going to accept. The question wasn't whether, but how to do it without compromising everything else. After they disconnected, she sat in the quiet kitchen and let herself imagine it. Leading a program, building systems, making decisions that affected people's lives in tangible ways. It terrified her. It also felt exactly right. She started the mentorship coordinator position 2 weeks later, after negotiating up to $45 per hour and cementing her schedule around Malik's needs and her hospital shifts. Simone set her up with a foundation email address, access to recipient files, and a budget that made Nia's hands shake when she saw the numbers. Her first task was recruiting mentors. She started by reaching out to previous scholarship recipients who'd graduated, 12 people who'd used similar programs to advance their careers. 8 responded enthusiastically. Then she posted in professional groups, carefully targeting industries where recipients were studying. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, she had 67 applications from people wanting to mentor, executives and mid-level managers, recent graduates, and experienced professionals. Reading their applications, Nia was struck by how many mentioned their own struggles. Immigrant parents who'd worked multiple jobs, first-generation college students who'd navigated systems alone. People who remembered what it felt like to be invisible. She developed an interview protocol and started conducting calls. Some applicants were clearly looking for resume padding, but others spoke with the kind of quiet passion that came from genuine understanding, like Veronica Martinez, a hospital administrator who'd started as a medical assistant and worked her way up over 15 years. I remember when my daughter was Malik's age, Veronica said during their interview. I was taking night classes, working full-time, barely holding it together. Someone from my program connected me with a mentor who'd been through it. She didn't just give me career advice. She told me which professors were understanding about childcare emergencies. She helped me practice interview answers until I stopped apologizing for needing flexibility. She reminded me I wasn't asking for special treatment. I was asking for what I'd earned. That's exactly what I want this program to be, Nia said. Then I'm in. However I can help. Nia matched Veronica with Keisha, the nursing student from the advisory board. She paired Amanda with a paralegal who'd escaped an abusive marriage and rebuilt her career from nothing. She connected James with a high school principal who'd grown up in foster care. Each match required careful consideration. Shared industry background mattered, but so did personality, life experience, and communication style. Nia developed detailed profiles, conducted 3-way introduction calls, and established monthly check-in requirements. The work was consuming, but it was also deeply satisfying in a way her hospital job had never been. She was building something, creating connections, watching people find support they hadn't known existed. 6 weeks into the program, Keisha called her. Nia, you're not going to believe what Veronica did. What happened? She got me an interview at Brookhaven General for a nursing extern position, paid, during school. She called in a favor with someone in HR. Nia's throat tightened. Keisha, that's incredible. I have 3 kids, and I've been terrified about clinical rotations because I didn't know how I'd cover childcare for 12-hour shifts. This position? It counts toward my clinical hours and pays $15 an hour. Veronica literally just changed my entire trajectory. After hanging up, Nia sat at her makeshift desk, really just a corner of her kitchen table. and felt something powerful surge through her chest. This was working, not perfectly, not without complications, but genuinely, measurably working. She documented Keisha's success in her weekly report to Julian, along with 3 other mentor matches that had resulted in tangible opportunities. When they had their next coordination call, he looked different, lighter somehow. "This is extraordinary," he said, scrolling through her report. "The outcomes are exceeding every projection." "People want to help," Nia said. "They just need the right structure." "You built that structure." "We built it. This was collaborative." Julian smiled. "You're generous with credit." "I'm accurate with credit." They'd fallen into a pattern over the past month. Weekly video calls to discuss program development, occasional texts about specific matches or challenges, emails full of data and analysis. The relationship had shifted from donor-recipient to something closer to colleagues. Nia found herself looking forward to their calls in a way that had nothing to do with professional obligation. Julian was smart in a way that didn't demand recognition. He asked good questions. He admitted when he didn't know something, and he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, making her laugh at unexpected moments. It was dangerous, she knew, getting comfortable with him, starting to see him as more than the billionaire who'd changed her circumstances. But she couldn't seem to help it. "I want to expand your role," Julian said, pulling her back to the present. "Julian, hear me out. The mentorship program is succeeding beyond expectations, but I'm getting feedback from recipients about other barriers. Transportation, professional clothing, technology. Things the scholarship covers in theory, but not in practice." "What are you proposing?" "An emergency support fund, small grants, $500 to $1,000, for unexpected expenses that threaten academic progress. You'd oversee it, develop application criteria, review requests, approve disbursements." Nia's mind raced. "That's a lot of responsibility. You're handling the mentorship program flawlessly. This is a natural extension. It's also a lot of power, deciding who gets help and who doesn't. Which is why I want someone who understands the stakes. Someone who won't make people jump through hoops to prove they deserve basic support." Nia thought about the times she'd needed $500 and hadn't had it. The car repair that had eaten her grocery budget for a month. The urgent care visit when Malik had strep throat and she didn't have insurance. The desperate calculations of which bill could wait another week. "I'd want clear guidelines," she said, "transparent processes, and oversight so I'm not making decisions in a vacuum." "Agreed. We'll develop it together." "And the recipients need to know this exists, not buried in a handbook, but clearly communicated." "Absolutely." Nia looked at him through the screen, at the earnestness in his expression, and felt her resistance crumbling. "Okay, but I need another 5 hours a week and $50 an hour for this component." Julian didn't even hesitate. "Done." After the call, Nia walked to Malik's room. He was sprawled across his bed, supposedly doing homework but actually reading a comic book hidden inside his math textbook. "Nice try," she said. He grinned, unrepentant. "Worth a shot." She sat on the edge of his bed. "How would you feel about moving?" Malik's eyes widened. "Moving where?" "I don't know yet, but if things keep going well with my job, my new job, we might be able to afford a bigger place. Maybe a 2-bedroom. You could have your own room." "For real?" "Maybe. I'm not promising anything, but it's possible." Malik launched himself at her, wrapping his arms around her neck. "That would be so cool. Could we get one near the baseball field?" "We'll see what we can find." After Malik returned to his homework, actual homework this time, Nia stood in the doorway of their apartment and looked around. The water-stained ceiling, the kitchen with barely enough room for 2 people, the living room that doubled as her bedroom, her couch folding out into a bed she assembled every night. 6 months ago, this had been the best she could hope for. Now it was a stepping stone. The realization was dizzying. The Emergency Support Fund launched 3 weeks later. Nia had developed a 1-page application, a 2-day turnaround time, and a review process that prioritized urgency over bureaucracy. The first request came from a scholarship recipient in Indiana whose car had broken down the week before finals. Nia approved $850 for repairs without hesitation. The second request came from a single father whose childcare had fallen through mid-semester. $700 for backup care. Approved. A mother whose laptop died during midterms. $600 for a replacement. Approved. Within a month, she'd processed 23 requests. 23 small catastrophes prevented from derailing academic progress. Every approval felt like undoing a small piece of the systemic cruelty that had defined her own life. But it was also exhausting. Balancing the coordinator work with hospital shifts and nursing prerequisites meant Nia was running on 5 hours of sleep most nights. She'd wake at 5 to study, work an 8-hour hospital shift, pick up Malik from baseball practice, review mentor reports and emergency fund applications until midnight, then collapse into bed and do it again. She was stretched so thin she could feel herself fraying. It was Julian who noticed. "You look tired," he said during their weekly call. "I'm fine." "Naya," she sighed. "I'm managing. It's a lot, but it's important. What's your current schedule look like?" Reluctantly, she walked him through it. The hospital shifts, the program coordination, the schoolwork, the parenting responsibilities. Julian's expression darkened. "That's not sustainable. It's temporary. Once I finish prerequisites and start the actual nursing program, I'll adjust. Or you could adjust now, reduce your hospital hours, and lose income. Julian, the scholarship covers tuition and some expenses, but I still need my paycheck. What if the foundation supplemented the difference? We could structure it as an expansion of your coordinator role." "No." Nia's voice came out sharper than intended. "I'm not taking more charity." "It's not charity. You're doing crucial work that requires more time than we initially allocated. I'm proposing appropriate compensation for expanded responsibilities." "It feels like charity." Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Why is it so hard for you to accept help?" "Because help comes with strings, or it disappears, or it gets used against you. I'm not going to do any of those things." "You say that now." "I mean it." Nia pressed her fingers against her temples, feeling a headache building. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I need to maintain some independence, some sense that I'm building this myself." "You are building it yourself. Accepting support doesn't diminish that." "Doesn't it? Everyone will say I got here because a billionaire handed me opportunities." "Let them say it. You'll know the truth, that you took those opportunities and turned them into something extraordinary." Nia wanted to argue, wanted to hold on to her defensive pride. But she was so tired, and Julian was looking at her with such genuine concern, and the offer was tempting in a way that scared her. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Okay. But Nia, you don't have to do everything the hard way to prove you deserve it. You've already proven that 1,000 times over." After they disconnected, Nia sat in the darkness of her living room and tried to untangle the knot of emotions in her chest. Pride and pragmatism, independence and exhaustion, the fear of being obligated, and the desperate need for relief. She thought about Malik, who barely saw her anymore except in rushed moments between obligations. She thought about her anatomy textbook, which she was 3 chapters behind in because she kept falling asleep while studying. She thought about the recipients relying on her programs and how much better she could serve them if she wasn't constantly operating on empty. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. What would the expanded role look like specifically? Julian's response came immediately. 20 hours a week total, $60 an hour. Covers mentorship coordination, emergency fund oversight, and program development. You reduce hospital shifts to part-time. More time for school and Malik. Nia did the math. 20 hours at $60 was $1,200 weekly, $4,800 monthly. More than she currently made working twice as many hours. I want a contract, clear expectations, defined scope, performance metrics. Absolutely. Simone will draft something for your review. And if this doesn't work, if I can't handle it, or if the foundation decides to restructure, I need advance notice. Time to find other work. 90-day notice minimum, written into the contract, plus severance if termination is foundation initiated. Nia stared at the messages, looking for the trap, the hidden clause, the way this would eventually blow up in her face. She couldn't find one. Okay, let's do it. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I'm proud of you." The message shouldn't have affected her the way it did, but Nia felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something that had nothing to do with professional achievement and everything to do with being seen. She didn't respond, didn't know what to say that wouldn't reveal too much. Instead, she opened her anatomy textbook and for the first time in weeks, studied without the crushing pressure of exhaustion making every word swim. The transition to reduced hospital hours happened over 2 weeks. Nia's supervisor was disappointed but understanding. The hospital was used to losing aides to nursing programs. Her last full shift was on a Friday, and as she walked out of Brookhaven General at 3 o'clock instead of 11 at night, she felt disoriented by the afternoon sunlight. Malik's baseball practice didn't start until 4. She had an entire hour with nothing scheduled. Nia sat in her car and cried. Not from sadness, from relief so overwhelming it had nowhere else to go. When she composed herself, she drove to the baseball field early and watched Malik practice through the chain-link fence. He was getting good, really good. His swing had developed real power, and his fielding had improved dramatically. Derek noticed her and walked over. "He's talented," the coach said. "Natural athlete. But more than that, he works hard, never complains, always encouraging his teammates." "He's a good kid." "He is, and the select team tryouts are next month. I think he has a real shot." After practice, Malik bounded over, face flushed and happy. "Mom, did you see? I got 3 hits in batting practice." "I saw. You were amazing." On the drive home, he chattered about baseball strategy and teammates and an upcoming game. Nia listened, really listened, without mentally running through her task list or calculating how many hours until she needed to sleep. This, she thought, this was what the breathing room bought her. Time to be present, time to be a mother instead of just a provider. That night, after Malik was asleep, Nia's phone rang. Julian's name lit up the screen. She answered. "It's late for a business call." "This isn't business. I wanted to check in, see how your first day of reduced hours felt." Nia smiled despite herself. "Strange. Good, strange. I watched Malik's entire practice." "How was it?" "Perfect. He's really improving. Derek thinks he'll make the select team." "That's wonderful." Julian paused. "I'm glad you're getting time back." "Me too. Thank you for pushing me to accept this." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though. I was so locked into survival mode I couldn't see past it. You gave me permission to want more." "You gave yourself permission. I just provided the means." They talked for another 20 minutes, conversation drifting from program updates to Malik's baseball aspirations to Julian's complete lack of athletic ability as a child. "I was terrible at sports," he admitted, uncoordinated, asthmatic, and convinced physical activity was punishment. Nia laughed. "What changed?" "Nothing. I'm still terrible. But I pay people to make me exercise now, so at least I'm terrible while healthy." "That's the most billionaire thing I've ever heard." "I'm aware. My trainer judges me constantly." When they finally said goodnight, Nia realized she was smiling, that she'd been smiling through most of the conversation. It was dangerous, this growing comfort between them, this sense of friendship developing beneath the professional relationship. But Nia was tired of always protecting herself, tired of treating every good thing as a potential threat. Maybe, just maybe, she could let herself enjoy this, whatever this was becoming. The thought followed her into sleep and greeted her when she woke. And for once, instead of fear, what she felt was anticipation. The shift happened so gradually that Nia almost didn't notice until she was standing in the middle of it. 3 months into her expanded role with the Cross Foundation, she'd developed a rhythm that felt sustainable for the first time in years. Morning study sessions before Malik woke. Part-time hospital shifts 3 days a week. Foundation work woven through the afternoons, evenings reserved for Malik's homework and baseball practice, nights for coursework and program administration. It was still demanding, but it was manageable. More than that, it was purposeful. The mentorship program had grown to 87 active matches. The emergency fund had prevented 42 academic crises, and Nia had started getting emails from recipients she'd never met, thanking her for creating systems that made them feel seen. She saved every single message. On a Tuesday evening in late October, Nia sat in the bleachers watching Malik's select team practice. The tryouts had gone exactly as Derek predicted. Malik made the team with room to spare. Now he practiced 4 times a week, his dedication bordering on obsessive. She was reviewing emergency fund applications on her tablet when someone sat down beside her. Julian. Nia startled, nearly dropping the device. What are you doing here? I was in town for a site visit at the community college. Thought I'd stop by. He nodded toward the field. Which one is Malik? Shortstop, number 12. They watched in silence as Malik fielded a ground ball and fired it to first base with impressive accuracy. He's good, Julian observed. He works hard. Like his mother. Nia glanced at him. He looked different outside the context of video calls and conference rooms. More relaxed in jeans and a pullover sweater. More human. You didn't have to come all the way to Brookhaven just to check on program metrics, she said. I didn't come for metrics. Then why? Julian was quiet for a moment, watching Malik dive for a line drive and come up with the ball. Because I wanted to see how you were doing, really doing, not the professional update version. I'm fine. Nia, she sighed. I'm good. Actually good. Better than I've been in a long time. But? No but. For once in my life, there's no but. Julian smiled. I'm glad. They sat together as practice continued. Other parents arrived, setting up chairs and chatting about weekend tournaments and fundraising requirements. A few glanced curiously at Julian. He didn't quite blend in, even dressed casually, but no one approached. When practice ended, Malik jogged over, stopping short when he saw Julian. Mom, whose recognition flickered across his face. Wait, you're the guy from the party, the one who got us the cake. Julian looked surprised. You remember that? Are you kidding? Best birthday ever. Malik studied him with open curiosity. You're really rich, right? Malik! Nia's voice came out sharper than intended. But Julian laughed. Yeah, I'm really rich. Cool. Can you throw a baseball? Poorly. Want me to teach you? Nia started to intervene, but Julian was already standing. I'd like that. She watched them walk onto the field, Malik chattering about grip and stance while Julian listened with the same focused attention he brought to foundation meetings. He was terrible, just like he'd claimed. His throws wobbled awkwardly, barely reaching Malik. But he kept trying, and Malik kept coaching with 8-year-old patience. Something warm and complicated bloomed in Nia's chest. Your boyfriend seems nice. Nia turned to find another team mother, Jessica, settling into the bleachers beside her. He's not my boyfriend. He's my boss. Jessica's eyebrows rose. Your boss comes to your kids' baseball practice? It's complicated. I bet. Jessica grinned. The way he looks at you is not complicated, though. He does not look at me any particular way. Sure. And that's why he drove 40 minutes to watch practice when he could have just called. After Jessica wandered off, Nia forced herself to focus on her tablet, but her eyes kept drifting to the field, to Julian's terrible throws and Malik's delighted laughter. When they finally returned, Malik was beaming. He's hopeless, Mom, like really bad. Thanks for the assessment, buddy, Julian said dryly, but he tries hard. That counts for something. On the drive home, Malik peppered Nia with questions about Julian. How did she know him? Was he really a billionaire? Did he have a private jet? We work together, Nia said, and I don't know about the jet. He seems cool for a rich person. Nia bit back a smile. Yeah, he does. That night after Malik was asleep, Julian called. Thank you for letting me crash practice, he said. I know that was probably weird. It was definitely weird, but Malik loved it. He's a great kid. You should be proud. I am. Every day. Nia paused. Can I ask you something? Why did you really come today? Julian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. Because I'm starting to realize that the foundation, the programs, all of it, it's not just about fixing systems. It's about people, specific people who matter. And you matter, Nia. You and Malik both. Nia's heart did something complicated in her chest. Julian, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I just want you to know that this isn't transactional for me anymore, if it ever was. What is it then? I don't know, but I'd like to figure it out, if you're open to that. Nia thought about Jessica's observation, about the warmth she felt watching Julian throw terrible baseballs with her son, about the way their phone calls had started lasting longer, drifting into territory that had nothing to do with program administration. "I think I'm open to it," she said softly. "But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this falling apart, of getting attached and then losing it, of Malik getting hurt if things go wrong. Those are all valid fears. But some risks are worth taking. And I promise you, Nia, I'm not going anywhere, not unless you tell me to." They talked until midnight, conversation winding through fear and hope and the complicated territory between professional and personal. When they finally said goodnight, Nia felt like she was standing at the edge of something vast and uncertain. She didn't step back. The following week brought the first real test of whatever was developing between them. Nia arrived at the foundation office for a scheduled program review to find Simone waiting with an uncomfortable expression. "We have a situation," Simone said. "Board member concerns about program expansion costs." Nia's stomach dropped. "What kind of concerns?" "The emergency fund is significantly over budget. Some board members are questioning whether the spending is sustainable." "We're helping people stay in school. How is that not sustainable?" "They're not questioning the mission. They're questioning the financial model." Simone pulled up a presentation on the conference room screen. "The board meets tomorrow. Julian wants you there to defend the program." "Me? I'm not qualified to present to a board." "You're the program coordinator. You understand the impact better than anyone." Julian appeared in the doorway. "And you're the only person they'll actually listen to. Numbers are abstract. You make them real." Nia looked between them. "This feels like an ambush." "It's an opportunity," Julian corrected, "to show them why this work matters, to make the case for expansion instead of contraction. What if I can't convince them? Then we fight harder. But I don't think you'll have that problem." The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Julian and Simone coached Nia through presentation basics, helping her translate raw data into compelling narrative. She pulled case studies, recipients who'd stayed in school because of emergency funds, mentorship matches that had led to job offers, systemic barriers the program had dismantled. By the time she walked into the boardroom the next afternoon, she felt marginally prepared and completely terrified. The board was exactly what she expected. 12 people in expensive suits, regarding her with polite skepticism. She recognized a few names from business news: tech executives, venture capitalists, people who moved millions with casual decisions. Julian sat at the head of the table. He caught her eye and nodded slightly. Nia took a breath and began. She walked them through the numbers first. 87 mentorship matches with a 93% satisfaction rate. 42 emergency fund disbursements, averaging $720 each. Retention rates for scholarship recipients at 98%, compared to 65% for similar demographic groups nationally. Then she made it personal. "Behind every data point is a person," she said, like Keisha Williams, who's now working as a nursing extern while completing her degree because her mentor connected her with opportunities. Or Marcus Chen, whose car broke down before finals and who would have failed his accounting certification if we hadn't approved emergency funds for repair. Or Amanda Torres, who almost withdrew from her paralegal program because she couldn't afford professional clothes for her internship. She pulled up photos, recipients who'd given permission to share their stories, faces that reflected the same exhaustion and hope Nia saw in her own mirror. The emergency fund isn't over budget because we're wasteful. It's over budget because we're actually meeting need instead of pretending it doesn't exist. You can cut the program and save money in the short term, but you'll lose recipients, waste the investment you've already made in their education, and prove that this foundation cares more about spreadsheets than people. One board member, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. "That's quite an accusation, Ms. Carter." "It's an observation and a challenge. You have the resources to do this right. The question is whether you have the will." The room fell silent. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd just called out a room full of powerful people. Either it would work or she'd just destroyed everything. Julian spoke carefully. "I think what Nia is articulating is that we have a choice. We can optimize for short-term fiscal conservatism, or we can invest in long-term impact. I vote for impact." "You would," another board member said dryly. "It's your foundation." "Actually, the silver-haired woman said. It's our foundation. And I think Ms. Carter makes an excellent point. We're not hurting for money. We're hurting for courage. She looked at Nia. I move to approve the emergency fund expansion and increase the budget by 25%. Seconded, another member said immediately. The vote passed 9-3. Nia barely processed the rest of the meeting. When it finally ended and board members filed out, she sat frozen in her chair, adrenaline still flooding her system. Julian waited until they were alone. You were incredible. I called them cowards. You called them to action. There's a difference. I can't believe that worked. I can. He sat down beside her. You know what they saw in there? Someone who genuinely cares. Someone who's not performing concern but living it. That's more powerful than any polished presentation. Nia looked at him. You set me up. I gave you a platform. You did the rest. What if I'd failed? Then I would have fought another way. But I knew you wouldn't fail. The certainty in his voice made something crack open inside her. Why do you believe in me so much? Because you're brilliant and capable, and you've survived things that would have broken most people. Because you see problems and solve them instead of making excuses. Because... He stopped, seeming to catch himself. Because what? Julian met her eyes. Because I'm falling in love with you, and it's terrifying and exhilarating, and I can't seem to stop. The words hung in the air between them. Nia's first instinct was to run. To protect herself and Malik from the inevitable disappointment, to reject this before it could reject her. But she was tired of running. I'm falling too, she whispered, and I don't know what to do about it. Julian reached across the space between them and took her hand. We could start by having dinner like normal people. We're not normal people. You're a billionaire and you're someone I respect more than almost anyone I've ever met. Can we start there? Nia looked down at their joined hands. His palm was warm against hers, fingers gentle. Dinner, she said. Okay, but somewhere normal. No five-star restaurants or places with dress codes. I know a good taco truck. She laughed despite herself. You do not. I do. Best al pastor in Springfield. Cash only, no pretension. When? Friday? I'll pick you up at 7. Nia nodded, heart racing. Friday. They sat there for a long moment, hands still clasped, both of them aware they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Finally, Julian squeezed her hand and released it. I should let you go. You have class tonight. Anatomy lab. We're dissecting sheep hearts. Romantic. Very. She stood, gathering her materials. At the door, she paused. Julian? Thank you for today, for believing I could do this. Always. The words settled around her like a promise. Friday arrived faster than Nia expected. She spent an embarrassing amount of time figuring out what to wear, settling finally on jeans and a blouse that Jessica had helped her pick out during an impromptu shopping trip. You're going on a date with a billionaire and you're wearing Target, Jessica had said. He suggested a taco truck. I'm dressing appropriately. Now checking her reflection one final time, Nia wondered if she should have dressed up more. But then she remembered Julian's terrible baseball throws and his admission that he still couldn't beat his high school coding teacher at chess, and she relaxed. This was just dinner, with someone who saw her, who valued her, who claimed to be falling in love with her. Malik was at a sleepover with his best friend from the baseball team, Mrs. Rodriguez had volunteered to be on call if needed, though she'd given Nia a knowing smile that suggested she understood this wasn't a business meeting. Julian arrived exactly at 7. He'd clearly gotten the casual memo. Dark jeans, a Henley shirt, leather jacket that looked worn in rather than expensive. When he smiled at her from the doorway, Nia's heart did something acrobatic. You look beautiful, he said. You clean up okay yourself. The taco truck was exactly as advertised, parked in a lot near Springfield's Riverside Park, surrounded by picnic tables and string lights. They ordered at the window and found a spot away from the other diners. This is perfect, Nia said, biting into her al pastor taco. How did you find this place? Pure desperation one night after a 16-hour coding marathon. Best decision I ever made. Julian tried his carnitas and made an appreciative sound. Well, second best. First best was listening to my assistant and stopping in Brookhaven 6 months ago. Nia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Smooth. I'm trying. They talked easily, conversation flowing from Malik's latest baseball achievements to Nia's anatomy class to Julian's complete inability to keep houseplants alive. When Julian admitted he'd killed a cactus through neglect, Nia laughed so hard she nearly choked on her horchata. It's not funny, he protested. I felt terrible. That cactus trusted me. It was a plant. A plant I failed. As the evening darkened and the string lights glowed brighter, the conversation turned more serious. Julian talked about his mother, about the guilt of becoming successful too late to change her life. Nia talked about Malik's father, about learning to build a life from the rubble of abandonment. Do you ever regret having Malik? Julian asked carefully. Never. Not once. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Nia paused. But I regret the circumstances. I regret that he's grown up seeing me struggle, that he's learned to expect less because we've had less. That's changing. Because of you. Because of you, Julian corrected. I provided resources. You built the life. They walked along the river after dinner, the water dark and quiet beside them. At some point, Julian's hand found hers. It felt natural. Right. I need to tell you something, Nia said, about boundaries. Julian stopped walking. Okay. Malik is my priority. Always. And if this, whatever this is, if it doesn't work out, I need to know he won't be collateral damage. I would never hurt Malik. Not intentionally, but he's already attached to you. He talks about you constantly. If you disappear from his life, I won't. Julian turned to face her fully. Nia, I understand your fear, but I'm not here temporarily. I'm not experimenting. I'm serious about this, about you, about being part of your life, which includes being part of Malik's life. You can't promise that. People leave. People do. But I'm not people. I'm someone who spent his entire childhood wishing someone would stay. I'm not inflicting that on another kid, especially not yours. Nia searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, found only steady certainty. Okay, she said softly. But we go slow. Let Malik adjust. Make sure this is real before we make it official. However slow you need. I'm not going anywhere. He pulled her closer, and she let herself lean into him. His arms came around her, solid and warm. They stood like that for a long time, two people who'd survived too much learning to trust the possibility of something good. When Julian finally kissed her, gentle and questioning, Nia felt like she was falling and flying simultaneously. She kissed him back and decided falling was worth the risk. The drive home was quiet, comfortable. Julian walked her to her door. Thank you for tonight, he said. Thank you for the tacos. Best second date location? Definitely top 5. He smiled. I'll work on surpassing it. After he left, Nia leaned against her closed door and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Hope, joy, the terrifying vulnerability of wanting something this much. Her phone buzzed, a text from Julian. I meant what I said. About all of it. She typed back, I know, that's the scary part. Scary good or scary bad? Scary good. Definitely scary good. 3 dots appeared, then, sweet dreams, Nia. She fell asleep smiling, and for the first time in years, her dreams weren't about survival. They were about possibility. The possibility became reality in small increments over the next 3 months. Julian started attending Malik's Saturday practices regularly, sitting in the bleachers with Nia and slowly befriending the other parents. He learned baseball terminology through trial and error, cheered at the right moments, and stopped flinching when foul balls came near the stands. Malik started asking when Julian was coming over, and Julian started showing up with increasing frequency, for dinner, for homework help, for movie nights that usually ended with Malik asleep between them on the couch. It felt dangerously like family. Nia tried not to think too hard about it, tried to stay present instead of catastrophizing about future heartbreak. But late at night, after Julian had gone home and Malik was asleep in his room, the fear crept back in. This was too good, too easy. Something would break it. The something came on a Tuesday in early February. Nia was in the foundation office reviewing mentorship applications when Simone appeared in the doorway with an expression Nia had learned to dread. "We have a problem," Simone said. Nia's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Media kind. A journalist is working on a story about the Second Horizon program, specifically about you." "Me? Why me?" Simone pulled up an email on her tablet. She's positioning it as a human interest piece. Single mother lifted from poverty by billionaire's intervention. Rags to riches narrative. That's not what this is. I know, but the narrative is compelling, and she's already contacted several recipients for interviews. Nia's hands went cold. "What do they know?" "Enough. That you were the first recipient, that you now run major programs for the foundation, that you and Julian have been seen together outside of work contexts." The implications crashed over Nia like a wave. Her relationship with Julian exposed, her privacy shredded, Malik thrust into public scrutiny. "Can we stop it?" she asked. "We can try. But suppressing the story might make it worse, make it look like we have something to hide." "We do have something to hide, my son's childhood, my right to privacy." Julian appeared behind Simone. "What's going on?" Simone filled him in quickly. Julian's expression darkened with each detail. "Kill it," he said flatly. "Whatever it takes." "Julian, you know it doesn't work that way. If we push too hard, the story becomes about why we're pushing." "Then let me talk to the journalist, explain why this is inappropriate." "Or," Nia said quietly, "I could talk to her." They both turned to look at her. "If I give her an interview, control the narrative, maybe I can steer it away from the poverty porn angle. Make it about the program instead of about me." "That's risky," Simone said. "Once you talk, you can't control what gets published. If I don't talk, she fills in the gaps herself. At least this way I have some agency." Julian shook his head. "I don't want you exposed like this. You didn't sign up for media scrutiny." "I signed up the minute I accepted your scholarship and started dating you. I was naive to think it wouldn't eventually become public." "Nia, let me do this, please. I need to protect Malik, and the only way to do that is to get ahead of it." The interview was scheduled for Friday afternoon at a coffee shop in Springfield. The journalist, Carmen Rodriguez, was younger than Nia expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a recorder she placed conspicuously on the table between them. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Carter," Carmen said. "I know this must be uncomfortable." "It is, but I'd rather be uncomfortable than misrepresented." "Fair enough. So let's start with the basics. How did you become involved with the Cross Foundation?" Nia told the story carefully. The scholarship announcement, the application process, her selection based on merit and need. She emphasized the program's structure, the advisory board, the expansion to dozens of recipients. "But you were the first," Carmen pressed, "and there's evidence that Julian Cross was in Brookhaven the same day you had a difficult experience at a local bakery. Is that coincidence?" Nia's pulse quickened. "I don't know the specifics of Mr. Cross's schedule, but you do know he funded your son's birthday party shortly after, and that you began working for the foundation soon after. The timeline suggests a direct connection. The timeline suggests that a scholarship program was launched, and I was fortunate enough to be selected for it." Carmen leaned forward. "Ms. Carter, I'm not trying to diminish your accomplishments, but the public has a right to know if a billionaire is using charitable programs to pursue personal relationships." Anger flared hot in Nia's chest. "Is that what you think this is? Some kind of Pretty Woman scenario where the rich guy buys the struggling woman?" "I'm asking the question readers will ask." "Then let me answer it clearly. Julian Cross created a scholarship program that has changed the lives of nearly 100 people across 4 states. I was selected through a legitimate process with oversight and accountability. I earned my position as program coordinator through competence and hard work. And yes, Julian and I have developed a personal relationship, one that came after months of professional collaboration and mutual respect." "So you're confirming you're romantically involved?" Nia hesitated. This was the line. Once she crossed it, there was no going back. "I'm confirming that Julian Cross is a good man who saw a systemic problem and chose to address it. That he's created opportunities for people who deserve them but couldn't access them. And that in the process of working together, we discovered we care about each other. If that's scandalous to your readers, I can't control that. What about the appearance of impropriety? You're essentially being paid by someone you're dating. I'm being paid by a foundation I work for. Julian doesn't determine my salary. The board does. My performance is reviewed quarterly by independent evaluators. Everything is documented and transparent. Carmen made notes, expression unreadable. Tell me about your son. How has he adjusted to all these changes? Every protective instinct in Nia's body screamed, "My son is off limits. He's part of the story. He's 8 years old. He didn't choose any of this. So yes, he's benefited from the stability the scholarship provided. Yes, he's in a better situation than he was a year ago. But I won't let you turn his childhood struggles into content. Find another angle." Carmen studied her for a long moment. "You're very protective." "I'm a mother. It's my job." They continued for another 30 minutes, circling around the same territory. When it finally ended, Nia felt wrung out and uncertain whether she'd helped or hurt. The article published the following Wednesday. Nia saw it first on her phone while sitting in her car before an anatomy lecture. The headline made her stomach turn. "Second Chances: How One Billionaire's Foundation is Changing Lives and Hearts." She read through it with mounting dread. But as she progressed, something unexpected happened. The article was actually fair. Carmen had focused on the program's impact, the mentorship matches, the emergency fund success stories. Nia was featured, but as one example among many. The romantic relationship was mentioned in a single paragraph, framed as a natural development between colleagues rather than a scandal. The final line read, "Whether the Cross Foundation represents genuine systemic change or simply well-funded charity remains to be seen." But for recipients like Nia Carter and the 96 others currently enrolled, the impact is undeniable. Sometimes second chances come from unexpected places. The question is what we do with them. Nia called Julian immediately. "Have you seen it?" she asked. "Just finished reading. Are you okay?" "I think so. It could have been so much worse." "You handled it perfectly. Carmen clearly respected you." "I'm just glad Malik barely got mentioned, though now I need to figure out how to explain it if any of his friends' parents see it." "We'll handle it together, whatever comes next." What came next was complicated and messy and surprisingly manageable. Some of Malik's teammates' parents approached Nia with questions. She answered honestly but briefly. Yes, she worked for the Cross Foundation. Yes, she and Julian were together. No, it wasn't weird. Well, sometimes it was weird, but in normal relationship ways, not scandal ways. Most people were supportive. A few were judgmental. Jessica, predictably, was delighted. "I knew it," she crowed during baseball practice that Saturday. "I called it months ago. You're very proud of yourself." "I am. When's the wedding?" "Jessica." But the question lingered in Nia's mind. Where was this going? She and Julian had carefully avoided defining the relationship beyond acknowledging it existed. They hadn't discussed the future, hadn't talked about what it meant that Malik called Julian when he got his first A in math, or that Julian kept a spare phone charger at Nia's apartment, or that they'd started saying "I love you" with increasing frequency. The conversation finally happened on a March evening when Julian came over for dinner. Malik had a sleepover, leaving them alone in the apartment that suddenly felt too small for the weight of everything unsaid. They were cleaning up after pasta when Julian said, "I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." Nia's heart stuttered. "Okay. Where do you see this going? Us? Because I know where I want it to go, but I need to know if we're on the same page." Nia set down the plate she was drying. "Where do you want it to go?" "Everywhere. Marriage, family, building a life together that doesn't end when the workday does." He turned to face her fully. "I want to be Malik's stepfather. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to fight about whose turn it is to take out the trash and plan vacations and grow old together. Julian, I know it's fast. I know we've only been officially together for a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Nia felt tears prick her eyes. "I want that too, so much, but I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of losing it. Of this being temporary. Of Malik getting hurt if it doesn't work out." Julian crossed the kitchen and took her hands. "Nia, look at me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not your ex. I'm not someone who runs when things get difficult. I'm someone who canceled meetings to watch your son's baseball games. Who learned to cook because you mentioned you were tired of always being the one to make dinner. Who loves you so much it actually scares me sometimes. It scares me too. So let's be scared together. Let's build something that's worth the fear. Naya looked into his eyes and saw her future. Imperfect and uncertain, but fundamentally solid. Built on mutual respect and genuine partnership instead of desperation or obligation. Okay, she whispered. Yes, let's do it. Julian kissed her, deep and certain and full of promise. When they broke apart, he was smiling. I should probably ask Malik's permission, he said. He'll say yes. He's been drawing pictures of you at family dinners for weeks. Still, it matters. The conversation with Malik happened the following weekend. Julian had planned it carefully, taking Malik to the batting cages, then for ice cream, creating a context where it felt natural to talk about serious things. Nia watched from a bench as they sat at a picnic table, Julian's expression earnest, Malik's face cycling through surprise and consideration, and finally pure joy. When Malik launched himself at Julian in an enthusiastic hug, Nia's tears finally spilled over. They walked back together, Malik chattering excitedly. Julian asked if he could be part of our family, he announced. Like, officially. And I said yes, because duh, obviously yes. Can I tell the team? Can we get a bigger place so we all fit? Does this mean you're my dad now? Julian looked to Nia, clearly overwhelmed. She smiled through her tears. We'll figure out all the details. But yes, baby, we're going to be a family. That night, after Malik had exhausted himself with excitement and fallen asleep, Nia and Julian sat on her couch in the quiet apartment. I have something for you, Julian said. He pulled out a small box, not a ring box, something larger. Inside was a key. It's to a house, he explained, in Brookhaven, near the baseball fields. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, walking distance to Malik's school. I bought it last month. Nia stared at the key. You bought a house. I bought us a house if you want it. No pressure. I know moving in together is a big step, and we should probably wait, but I saw it and I could see us there. See Malik practicing in the yard. See you studying at the kitchen table. See our life in that space. Show me. They drove over immediately, pulling up to a modest 2-story with a porch and mature trees and a driveway where a basketball hoop stood waiting. Julian unlocked the door and led her through empty rooms that somehow already felt like home. The kitchen had space for a real table. The living room had windows that flooded it with light. Upstairs, the bedrooms were perfectly sized. One for Malik, one for them, one that could be a study or guest room or whatever they needed. In the backyard, Nia stood under the stars and felt the magnitude of everything that had changed. A year ago, she'd been canceling a birthday cake. Now she was standing in the yard of a house she'd share with a man who loved her, and a son who was finally getting the stability he deserved. It's perfect, she said. Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind. So that's a yes? That's a yes to all of it. The house, the future, the family we're building. They moved in over spring break. Malik claimed his room immediately, decorating it with baseball posters and the trophies his team had won. Nia set up her study space in the 3rd bedroom, textbooks and foundation files coexisting in organized chaos. Julian converted part of the basement into a home office, but spent most of his time at the kitchen table anyway, preferring the proximity to life happening around him. It wasn't seamless. They argued about household responsibilities and parenting approaches and how much time Julian spent on work calls. They navigated the complicated dynamics of blending lives that had developed separately for so long. But they also laughed, celebrated Malik's academic improvements and baseball victories, hosted the advisory board at their home, recipients spilling through rooms that had been empty weeks before, built routines and traditions, and a foundation stronger than any Nia had known. In May, the nursing program accepted Nia for fall enrollment. She'd finished her prerequisites with a 4.0 GPA, letters of recommendation that glowed, and an essay about using healthcare to break cycles of poverty that made her selection committee cry. Julian took them out to celebrate, not to an expensive restaurant, but back to the taco truck where they'd had their first date. Full circle, he said, raising his horchata in a toast. To second chances, Nia said. Malik, who'd been allowed one soda for the occasion, chimed in. And to family! They clinked their drinks together, three people who'd found each other against impossible odds. The Second Horizon program continued expanding. By summer, it supported 243 recipients across 8 states. The mentorship program had facilitated 17 job placements and countless professional connections. The emergency fund had prevented 68 academic withdrawals. And Nia, who'd started as recipient number 1, now led a team of 5 coordinators managing the whole operation. She'd renegotiated her salary twice, developed training curricula, and spoken at 3 conferences about effective support systems for non-traditional students. She was building something that mattered. In August, Julian proposed properly. Not at a fancy restaurant or elaborate setup, but in their backyard on a Tuesday evening while Malik practiced pitching against the fence. He got down on one knee right there in the grass, pulled out a ring he'd designed with Nia's preferences in mind, simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious, and asked if she'd marry him. Malik stopped pitching to watch, barely breathing. Nia said yes through happy tears. Malik whooped and ran to hug them both, the 3 of them collapsing into a laughing pile on the lawn while the baseball rolled forgotten into the garden. They married in October, a small ceremony in their backyard with the advisory board, baseball team families, and Julian's small circle of actual friends in attendance. Malik served as best man, taking the responsibility so seriously that he triple-checked the rings before the ceremony. Nia wore a dress she'd found on sale and altered herself. Julian wore a suit but lost the tie halfway through the reception. They cut a cake that Malik had helped design, baseball-themed, of course, and danced to a playlist they'd argued over for weeks. It was imperfect and intimate and exactly right. During the toasts, Simone stood and raised her glass. A year and a half ago, Julian called me from a bakery in Brookhaven with an impossible request. He wanted to change someone's life. What he didn't tell me was that he'd change his own life in the process. To Julian and Nia, proof that sometimes the best investments are the ones we don't plan. Keisha spoke next, her voice thick with emotion. Nia showed me that accepting help isn't weakness, that we deserve support and opportunities, and someone in our corner fighting for us. She built systems that actually work because she remembers what it's like when they don't. To the woman who changed my life and the lives of hundreds of others, thank you. When it was Malik's turn, he stood with his juice box held high. I'm really glad my mom forgot to pay for that cake. Because if she hadn't, Julian wouldn't have noticed us. And if Julian hadn't noticed us, we wouldn't be a family. So I guess sometimes bad things have to happen so good things can happen after. Also, the cake today is way better than the one we didn't get. No offense to that cake, but this one has 3 layers. Everyone laughed, and Nia pulled her son into a hug that lasted until he squirmed away, embarrassed. Later, when the guests had gone home and Malik had fallen asleep upstairs still wearing his suit, Nia and Julian sat on their porch swing, watching the stars. Do you ever think about how close we came to missing each other? Nia asked. All the time. If I'd left the bakery 30 seconds earlier, if you'd gone to a different store, if I'd talked myself out of getting involved. All those tiny choices. Leading to this. Nia leaned into him, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. I spent so long just trying to survive. I forgot what it felt like to actually live. And now? Now I'm living, really living, building a career I care about, raising my son in a stable home, married to my best friend. It doesn't feel real sometimes. It's real, Julian said softly. And it's exactly what you deserve, what you've always deserved. They sat in comfortable silence, the night air cool and promising around them. Inside, their house waited, full of books and baseball equipment and evidence of lives being lived fully. Upstairs, Malik slept in his own room, in his own bed, dreaming whatever dreams 8-year-olds dreamed. Nia thought about the woman who'd stood in Morrison's bakery 18 months ago, voice breaking as she canceled a birthday cake. That woman had been strong and determined, but hollowed out by exhaustion. She'd been surviving, but not thriving, holding on, but not building. That woman had deserved better, and somehow, impossibly, she'd found it. Not because a billionaire had swooped in to save her, not because charity had rescued her from poverty, but because when opportunity appeared, she'd been brave enough to grab it, smart enough to use it, strong enough to demand more than gratitude and take ownership of her own transformation. The scholarship had been the catalyst, but Nia had been the architect of everything that followed. She squeezed Julian's hand. I love you. I love you too, both of you. This whole chaotic, beautiful life we're building. It is beautiful, isn't it? The most beautiful thing I've ever been part of. They sat together as night deepened around them, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and built something extraordinary from the foundation of one canceled birthday cake. Inside their home, the future waited. Nursing school and career advancement, Malik's teenage years and baseball dreams. Foundation expansion and lives changed. Arguments and reconciliations. Ordinary days and extraordinary moments. All of it ahead of them. All of it possible because someone had noticed. Because someone had cared. Because two people had chosen to build something together instead of remaining isolated in their separate struggles. The cake that never was had become something far more nourishing. A partnership. A family. A life built not on rescue, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. And in the quiet of their porch swing, under stars that had witnessed countless human stories, Nia Carter Cross finally allowed herself to believe in happy endings. Not the fairy tale kind where problems disappeared and everything was easy, but the real kind, where people showed up for each other, where love was demonstrated through action, where second chances were seized and transformed into lasting change, where a single mother and a billionaire and a boy who loved baseball became something neither had imagined but both had needed. A family, chosen, fought for, built to last. And that, Nia thought as Julian kissed her temple and the stars wheeled overhead, was the best ending of all.